silent planet. The Kaltorian Empire had conquered 47 star systems before they heard the signal. It came from a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy, a world the universal catalogs listed as Terra or Earth, depending on which translation matrix you used. The transmission lasted exactly 4 minutes and 18 seconds. It was not a distress call. It was not a surrender. It was something the Kaltorians had never encountered in 3,000 years of expansion. A farewell. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic recording, playing for the 73rd time. The human who spoke was old by their species standards. Her face lined with exhaustion, her voice steady despite the explosions echoing in the background. To whoever finds this, the human said, we are gone. Not defeated. Not conquered. We chose this. Vex's primary arms crossed over his chitinous chest. Around him, his crew worked in silence, their usual deming of dominance absent. The message disturbed them. It disturbed him. Analysis, Vex commanded. His science officer, a floating U-3 named Kale, pulsed with uncertain bioluminescence. Commander, the timeline is clear. 47 cycles ago. An asteroid impact event triggered a cascade of environmental failures. 96% extinction rate within 3 planetary rotations. The remaining humans had perhaps 50 solar cycles before total atmospheric collapse. And yet they built this. Vex gestured at the data streams, flowing across the bridge displays. Kale's light dimmed with something resembling confusion. Yes, Commander. In their final 50 cycles, they constructed a quantum broadcast array, capable of reaching across 800 parsecs. They chose to spend their remaining resources on a transmission device rather than survival infrastructure. Irrational, Vex muttered. But even as he said it, something in his thorax tightened with an emotion he couldn't name. The message. The Eternal Judgment entered Earth's orbit 3 cycles later. Vex had seen dead worlds before. Planets stripped of resources. Civilizations erased by the Empire's advance. Ecosystems burned to ash. This was different. Earth was beautiful in its dying. The continents were visible beneath swirling cloud patterns. Oceans still reflected the system's yellow star. But the cities, those magnificent monuments to human ambition, stood empty. No lights, no transmissions, no life signs above microbial level. Take us to the transmission source. Vex ordered. The ship descended through atmosphere that still held breathable oxygen, past clouds that still produced rain, toward a massive structure built into the side of what human records called a mountain. The facility was enormous, easily 500 units tall, its surface covered in solar collectors and transmission. Dishes all pointed toward the stars. The away team materialized at the facility's entrance. Vex's environmental suit registered Earth's atmosphere as compatible with 70% of known species. The air smelled of growing things and decay in equal measure. Vines had already begun claiming the facility's outer walls. Inside, the lights still worked. Impossible. Kel whispered through the comm system. Their civilization collapsed 50 cycles ago. Nothing should have power. But the corridors were lit. Climate control hummed softly. And as they moved deeper into the facility, they found the first of the chambers, the archive. Vex stood in a room that stretched beyond his visual range. Crystalline data storage arrays rose like towers toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Each crystal pulsed with soft light. Active maintained waiting. "What is this?" he asked, though part of him already knew. A holographic interface activated at their approach. The same elderly human from the transmission appeared, but younger now, her eyes bright with fierce determination. "Welcome to the Archive of Humanity," her recorded voice said. "If you're seeing this, we are extinct. We had 50 years to prepare for our end. This is how we chose to spend them." The hologram gestured, and the crystals around them lit up in sequence. A constellation of human memory. Every book we ever wrote. Every song we ever sang. Every scientific discovery. Every mathematical proof. Every philosophy. Every joke, every recipe. Every letter written between lovers separated by distance. We recorded it all. Our languages. All 7,111 of them. Our art. Our mistakes. Our triumphs. Our history from the first stone tool to our last breath. Vex felt his respiratory systems accelerate. The scale of it. We also included our genetic database. The human continued. Every sequence we could preserve. 97% of Earth's biodiversity, archived down to the molecular level. We couldn't save ourselves. But perhaps someday, someone will have the technology to bring us back. Or at least remember that we existed. Kale floated beside Vex, their bioluminescence flickering with awe. "Commander, the energy requirements for maintaining this facility for even 50 cycles would be astronomical." They had nothing left, Vex said quietly. They could have built shelters, underground cities, generation ships to evacuate their population. Instead, they built this. The final room, the deepest chamber, held no data crystals. It held something else entirely. 10,000 faces looked out from the walls. Holographic recordings, each one a different human, each one speaking directly to the viewer. Children, elders, scientists, artists, farmers, soldiers, every ethnicity, every culture, every walk of life the species had known. They spoke in turn, their messages brief. We were here. We loved fiercely. We dreamed of stars. One made mistakes, but we learned. We created beauty. We never stopped trying to be better. Remember us? Vex stood frozen as 10,000 voices washed over him, each one unique, each one human, each one now silent forever. His four eyes reflected the holographic light, and for the first time in his long military career, Commander Vex of the Kaltorian Empire felt something crack in his certainty. These beings had faced extinction with dignity. They had looked into the void and chosen legacy over survival. They had spent their final breath, not on weapons or escape, but on memory. "Seer," one of his soldiers said hesitantly. "Orders." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then, "We guard this place. Send word to the Empire. Earth is now a protected monument. No salvage. No colonization. This." He gestured at the faces surrounding them. "This is sacred ground." As they returned to the ship, Vex carried a data crystal the archive had gifted them. It contained a single human concept, translated into universal language: hope. The Kaltorians had conquered 47 systems. They had never learned hope. Perhaps it was time they did. The ripple effect. 3 cycles after declaring Earth a protected monument. Commander Vex received the transmission he'd been dreading. "You will explain yourself, Commander." High Admiral Cross's face filled the communication screen, all 4 eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "You have declared a resource. Rich planet off, limits without authorization. You have diverted military assets to guard an empty world. And now, I learn you are studying the remains of a primitive species, rather than cataloging exploitable materials." Vex stood at attention on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment, his crew silent around him. He had known this moment would come. The Empire did not tolerate sentimentality. It did not honor the dead of conquered species. But Vex had spent 3 cycles reading the archive. "Admiral, with respect, humanity was not primitive." Vex's voice remained steady. "I am transmitting cultural data now. I request you review it before issuing final orders." Cross's mandibles clicked with irritation. "I do not have time for." They split the atom before they left their planet's atmosphere. Vex interrupted, a breach of protocol that would normally earn severe punishment. They mapped their own genetic code. They created artificial intelligence. They sent machines to other worlds in their system, while still fighting wars with chemical explosives. And in their final 50 years, while their civilization collapsed, they built something we have never conceived of in 3,000 years of empire. The High Admiral's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Hope, sir. They built hope." The Council of Worlds. Word of the archive spread like radiation through the galaxy's communication networks. Within 10 cycles, 17 different civilizations had sent ships to Earth. The Euthrine Collective, the Morgathi Hegemony, the Crystalline Ascendancy. Even the isolationist Velkera emerged from their nebula fortress to witness humanity's legacy. Vex stood in what had been the archive's main auditorium. A space humans had designed to hold 10,000 bodies, now filled with representatives from across known space. The diversity was staggering. Beings of energy and beings of stone. Hive minds and singular consciousness. Species that breathe oxygen and species that metabolized radiation. All of them silent as the holographic human spoke. "My name was Dr. Sarah Chen," the recording said. The woman appeared middle-aged, wearing what the archive identified as a laboratory coat. Behind her, Vex could see other humans working frantically at strange machines. "I was part of the archive project's leadership council. We debated for months about what message to leave you. Some wanted to emphasize our achievements, prove we were worthy of remembrance. Others wanted to focus on our failures, warn you away from our mistakes." Dr. Chen smiled, and there was something profound in that expression, something that transcended species. "We chose neither. We chose truth." The auditorium's walls came alive with images. Humans at their best, acts of compassion, scientific breakthroughs, artistic masterpieces that made even the cold-hearted Kultorians pause in appreciation. But also humans at their worst, wars, atrocities, environmental destruction, the systematic oppression of their own kind. "We were flawed," Dr. Chen continued. "We hurt each other. We damaged our world. We made mistakes that, in the end, contributed to our extinction. But we also loved. We created. We questioned. We reached for something better. even when we fell short. A Morgathi general, a species known for their brutal efficiency, leaned forward in their anti-gravity field. Why show us your weaknesses? Why not present only strength? As if anticipating the question across time, Dr. Chen's image looked directly at where the Morgathi now floated. Because perfection is a lie. Growth only happens through failure. And if there's one thing we learned in our brief existence, it's that the species who cannot acknowledge their mistakes are the ones doomed to repeat them. The hidden protocol. Vex discovered the deeper layer of the archive by accident. He had been reviewing human literature, a strange cultural artifact called poetry, when his data crystal interface glitched. For a moment, he saw code beneath the words. Equations. Schematics. Kiel. He called to his science officer. There's something else here. Encrypted within the cultural data. The Euthrene's bioluminescence pulsed with curiosity as they analyzed the hidden files. What they found made Vex's respiratory systems freeze. Commander, this is a terraforming algorithm and cloning protocols. And, by the ancestors, it's a complete instruction manual for rebuilding Earth's biosphere from the genetic archives. Vex stared at the data streams. They didn't just preserve their history. They preserved a resurrection protocol. More than that. Sir. Kiel's light flickered with something like excitement. These protocols are designed to be species agnostic. Any civilization with sufficient technology could use this to restore not just Earth, but to terraform any world. The humans. They didn't just leave their story. They left the tools to create new stories. A human voice activated, not Dr. Chen this time, but a younger man with kind eyes and calloused hands. My name was James Kowalski. I was a farmer before the collapse, led the Agricultural Archive Division. He smiled. If you're seeing this, you've figured out the gift beneath the gift. We knew we couldn't save ourselves, but maybe we could save you. These protocols represent 10,000 years of human trial and error in working with living systems. Every mistake we made, every success we achieved. Use it. Not to rebuild Earth, though if you want to, the instructions are there. Use it to heal your own worlds, to create new ones, to make sure no other species faces extinction without hope. The choice. The Council of Worlds convened for 3 planetary rotations. High Admiral Kroos himself arrived from the Kaltorian home system, bringing with him the Empire's ruling caste. They stood, or floated, or phased, in the Archive's auditorium, arguing about what humanity's legacy meant. This changes nothing, Kroos declared. They are extinct. We are not. We take what is useful and continue our expansion. But a voice interrupted, not from the Council, but from the Archive itself. A new hologram appeared, a human child, perhaps 10 years old by their species standards, speaking with the clarity of innocence. Hello, the child said. My name was Maya. I won't live to see next year. The air is getting too hard to breathe. But I wanted to tell you something important. Her dark eyes seemed to look at each being individually. My teacher said that the meaning of life isn't how long you live. It's what you do with the time you have. Humans only got a few thousand years on Earth, but we loved every minute of it. Even the hard minutes. Even the scary ones. We loved being alive. The child smiled. and Vex felt something break inside his chest cavity. "I hope you love being alive too," Maya said. "And I hope you remember that we did. That's all. Thank you for listening." The hologram faded. In the silence that followed, something unprecedented happened. High Admiral Kroos, Supreme Commander of the Kaltorian Empire's military forces, lowered all four of his eyes in what their species reserved for honoring the dead. "The Empire," he said quietly, "will commit resources to maintaining this facility in perpetuity. Furthermore," he paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried an emotion Vex had never heard from the ruthless admiral. "Furthermore, I am recommending to the Imperial Council that we implement a new protocol. Before any system is marked for conquest, we will first search for signs of culture, of art, of hope, perhaps." His mandibles clicked softly. "Perhaps it is time the Empire learned to preserve, not just to conquer." Around the auditorium, representatives from 17 civilizations watched in stunned silence as the galaxy's most feared military power chose mercy over might. Because a dead species taught them what it meant to be alive. The first seed, 6 cycles later, the Velcara, a species whose home world was dying from solar radiation, approached Vex with a request. The humans, terraforming protocols. Their crystalline ambassador chimed. Would they work for a world bathed in gamma radiation? Vex accessed the archive and found the answer within hours. Humanity had never faced that specific challenge, but their adaptive algorithms could be modified. The Velcara had the technology. Humanity had provided the wisdom. "Yes," Vex said simply. "But you must promise something in return." "Anything. When you save your world, you will build a monument, a library. You will record your own story, your failures and triumphs both, and you will leave it for whoever comes after. Humanity's gift must continue." The Velcara's crystalline structure pulsed with understanding. "We will call it the Second Archive." Vex looked out the archive's viewing window at Earth below, beautiful, empty, eternal. "No," he said softly. "You will call it the Next Archive. Because this is not about second chances. This is about continuing chances. As many as it takes." High above the silent planet, the eternal judgment maintained its vigil. But its weapons were cold, and its commander spent his nights reading human poetry to his crew. The Kaltorian Empire had conquered 47 systems. Humanity, in dying, was conquering hearts. 50 years later. Commander Vex was old now by Kaltorian standards. His chitin dulled with age, his movements slower, his 4 eyes dimmed by decades of service. He had retired from military command 20 cycles ago, but he had never left Earth. He couldn't. The archive had become more than a monument. It had become a pilgrimage site. Every cycle, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds came to walk humanity's halls, to read their words, to hear their voices. The next archives, now numbering 43 across the galaxy, all traced their lineage back to this silent blue planet. Vex stood in the chamber of 10,000 faces, as he did every morning, listening to the voices. Over 50 years, he had memorized many of them. The soldier who spoke of courage, the child who spoke of wonder, the poet who spoke of love in words that transcended species. But today, something was different. Commander Vex Kel floated into the chamber, their bioluminescence pulsing with agitation. The Uthrene had stayed with him all these years, curator and friend. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that wants to erase everything we've built. The Purifiers. They called themselves the Ascendancy of Pure Form. A coalition of extremist factions who believed the archive was a corruption of galactic culture. That humanity's influence was a disease spreading through civilization, making conquerors soft, making warriors into poets. Their fleet emerged from space at the edge of Earth's system. 200 warships bearing the mark of a dozen species, who rejected what they called the weakness of memory. Their leader, a being named Corrugate of the Morgathi, Purifier sect, transmitted a singular message. The archive will be destroyed. The human contamination will be purged. Return to strength. Return to power. Return to conquest. Within hours, the Council of Worlds scrambled defensive forces, but they were scattered across the galaxy. The fastest response fleet was 6 cycles away. Earth had 2 days. Vex stood on the bridge of an old patrol ship. The Eternal Judgment had been decommissioned decades ago, and looked at the holographic display showing the approaching armada. His small garrison of volunteers numbered barely 30 vessels. Scientists, historians, pilgrims who had been visiting the archive when the Purifiers arrived. We can't win this fight, his tactical officer said quietly. No, Vex agreed. But we can buy time. The last defense, the battle for Earth, lasted 18 hours. Vex's ragtag fleet fought with everything they had. Outdated weapons, civilian shields, pure desperation. They weren't warriors. They were believers. And belief, Vex had learned from humanity, was a weapon no scanner could detect. But belief couldn't stop plasma torpedoes. One by one, the defending ships fell. The scholar's hope. The memory's vigil. The eternal student. Each one buying minutes with their lives. Each crew knowing exactly what they died for. Finally, only Vex's ship remained, its shields flickering, hull breached in 14 places. Life support failing. The Purifier fleet surrounded them, weapons locked on the archive below. This is your final chance. Corrugate's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Abandon the human temple. Let us cleanse this infection. Vex looked around his dying bridge. His crew, Kaltorian, Uthrene, Velcara, even 2 young Morgathi, who had defected from the Purifier ranks, all watched him with eyes that held no fear. I am Commander Vex of the Kaltorian Empire, he said, his voice carrying across all frequencies. 50 years ago, I discovered what humanity left behind. Not weapons. Not conquest. Not even survival. They left us the tools to be better than we were. To hope when hope seemed impossible. To create when destruction was easier. To remember that we are not just beings who exist. We are beings who matter. He paused, drawing on reserves he didn't know he still possessed. You can destroy this archive. You can erase these buildings, these crystals, these recordings. But you cannot destroy what humanity taught us. Every world that used their terraforming protocols. Every species that built a next archive. Every being who learned to choose creation over destruction. Humanity didn't just leave a message in this place. They planted seeds in our hearts. And those seeds have already grown into forests. Poetic words. Corrugate sneered. From a dead species and a dying fool. Fire when ready. The Purifier fleet's weapons began to charge. The awakening. Then the archive activated. Not the recording systems. Not the holographic displays. Something else. Something deeper. The entire facility blazed with light. Every crystal simultaneously pulsing. Every data stream flowing. Every chamber illuminating, as if the sun itself had been captured underground. The energy signature was so massive it registered on sensors across 3 star systems. And from the archive's core, a transmission unlike anything ever recorded began to broadcast. It was every archived human voice speaking simultaneously. 10 billion recordings. Every language, every dialect, every tone, merged into a harmonic resonance that bypassed audio receptors and spoke directly to consciousness itself. Vex felt it in his thorax. His crew felt it in whatever organs processed emotion. And across space, every being within range felt it too. We are humanity. We were never gone. We are in every equation we left, every story we told, every protocol we shared, every heart we touched. You cannot kill what lives in memory. You cannot destroy what has already become part of you. On the Purifier flagship, Corrugate stumbled backward, mandibles clicking in confusion. Around the fleet, weapon systems began to malfunction, not from attack, but from hesitation. From crew members questioning orders. From warriors remembering why they had questioned the ascendancy in the first place. The final chamber. As the harmonic transmission continued, something else happened in the archive's deepest level. A place even Vex had never fully explored. A chamber unsealed. Kjol was the first to reach it, their bioluminescence pulsing with frantic light. Commander, you need to see this. Now. Vex descended through corridors that had been locked for 50 years, past security protocols that recognized his biometric signature. As if humanity had known he would be the one to find this place. As if they had been waiting for him specifically. The chamber was small, intimate, and at its center stood a single stasis pod. Inside, perfectly preserved, was a human child. Perhaps 5 years old, sleeping peacefully. Vital signs. Stable, suspended in a technology that shouldn't have been possible with humanity's level of advancement. A hologram flickered to life beside the pod. Dr. Sarah Chen appeared. But this recording was different, more personal, more raw. Commander Vex, she said, and hearing his name in her voice made his respiratory systems freeze. Yes, we knew your name. The archive has limited predictive algorithms. We calculated the probability of who would find us, who would care enough to stay, who would fight when fighting seemed impossible. You matched the profile with 97% certainty. She smiled, tired but determined. This is Aisha. She was 4 years old when we placed her in stasis. We didn't have the resources to save everyone, but we managed to save 12 children, the last living humans. They're in suspended animation in chambers across this facility, waiting. Not for rescue. Not for us to return, but for the galaxy to be ready. Dr. Chen's eyes glistened with moisture. The human emotional response Vex had learned was called crying. We gambled everything on a belief that seems insane, that if we gave freely, if we showed our truth, if we left hope instead of weapons, someone would care. Someone would protect what we built. someone would be worthy of our children. She looked directly at Vex across 50 years of recorded time. Wake them when the galaxy has learned what we tried to teach. Wake them when hope has defeated fear. Wake them when you're certain they'll have a chance to live in a better universe than the one we died in. The recording paused. Then Dr. Chen added softly, "And Vex, thank you. For remembering us. For fighting for us. For becoming exactly who we hoped you'd be." The choice. Vex stood before the stasis pod, his 4 eyes locked on the sleeping child. Around him, alarms were blaring. The purifiers were preparing their final attack. The harmonic transmission was destabilizing. His ship was falling from orbit. None of it mattered. 12 children. The last humans. Waiting for 50 years for the galaxy to prove it had learned their lessons. "Cool," Vex said quietly. "Status of the Purifier fleet." "There. Commander, you won't believe this. They're standing down. The harmonic transmission. It's forcing them to experience archived human memories. They're living through human history. Feeling what humans felt. They're experiencing empathy whether they want to or not." And the Council of Worlds fleet. 6 hours out. "But Commander, even if the Purifiers retreat, even if we hold this position, is the galaxy ready for this? To know that humanity can return?" Vex looked at the child's peaceful face. Aisha. She had been born into a dying world. Placed in frozen sleep with the faith that strangers would care enough to give her a future. The weight of that trust pressed against his thorax like a physical force. "No," he said finally. "The galaxy isn't ready yet. There are still purifiers. Still those who would exploit these children or worse. But..." He placed one chitinous hand against the stasis pod's viewing window. "But every day, more species build next archives. Every cycle, more beings choose creation over destruction. Every year, we grow closer to the universe humanity dreamed of." He looked at Cole, his oldest friend. "We wait. We protect them. And when the day comes that we can wake them to a galaxy that deserves them, that's when humanity truly returns." 50 years forward. The Purifier fleet retreated after 6 hours of exposure to humanity's harmonic transmission. Corrigan himself emerged from the experience transformed. Not conquered, but changed. He dissolved the ascendancy of pure form and became the most vocal advocate for archive preservation in the Morgathi. Hegemony. The Council of Worlds established the Order of Earth's Guardians, a permanent multi-species force dedicated to protecting the archive and the secret of its deepest chamber. Commander Vex served as its first leader until his death at age 214, surrounded by friends from across the galaxy. His final words, a human phrase he had memorized. "We were here. We loved fiercely. We dreamed of stars." The next archives numbered 372. 12 species had been saved from extinction using humanity's protocols. 4 ongoing wars had been resolved by mediators trained in human conflict resolution theory. An entire generation of galactic youth grew up reading human literature, studying human philosophy, dreaming human dreams, and in the deepest chamber of Earth's archive, 12 children slept peacefully, waiting, not for rescue, not for resurrection, but for readiness. The last message. 100 years after the archive's discovery, the new Guardian commander, A young Velcara named Luminescence, in crystal, stood before the chamber of 10,000 faces and heard a recording she'd never heard before. It was a human man, elderly, speaking with the calm certainty of someone at peace with their end. My name was Marcus Webb. I was a teacher. Philosophy and literature, if that matters. I won't survive long enough to see the archive completed, but I wanted to leave one last message for whoever is listening 100 years from now. He smiled, and somehow that smile carried across a century of silence. If you're hearing this, it means we succeeded. You found us. You remembered us. You kept our gift alive. But more than that, you kept yourselves alive. You chose hope over fear, memory over erasure, growth over stagnation. The old teacher leaned forward, his eyes bright with conviction. Now here's the hard part: don't worship us. Don't make humanity into myths or legends or perfect beings. We weren't. We were flawed, frightened, frequently foolish creatures who stumbled through our brief existence, making mistakes at every turn. But we tried. Every single day, despite everything. We tried to be better. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that transcended species. That's the real message. Not humanity was great. Not humanity was wise. Just this humanity tried. And in trying, in refusing to give up even when our world was ending, we left something behind that mattered. Marcus Webb's image began to fade, the recording reaching its end. So, here's my question for you. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, whenever you're watching this, what will you leave behind? What will future generations find when they sift through your ruins? Will they find weapons or wisdom? Fear or hope? Closed fists or open hands? The recording stopped, leaving only darkness and the question hanging in the air. Luminescence, in crystal, stood in silence, processing the weight of that question. Then she did what humans might have called making a decision. She activated her communication array and sent a message to the Council of Worlds. This is Guardian Commander Luminescence, in crystal. I am formally requesting the Council convene to discuss initiating the Awakening Protocol. I believe. She paused, crystalline structure resonating with determination. I believe the galaxy is ready. I believe we have become worthy of humanity's trust. Epilogue. The first dawn. When Aisha opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a face that definitely wasn't human. 4 eyes. Chitinous exterior. Mandibles that clicked softly, with what the translation implant in her ear identified as gentle concern. Hello, little one, the alien said in accented but perfect English. My name is Clarity of Purpose. I am a Kaltorian. You've been asleep for 150 years. Please don't be afraid. Aisha looked around the chamber, so familiar yet strange. Preserved exactly as she remembered from the day they put her to sleep. Her mother's picture still sat by the pod controls. Her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Whiskers, was still clutched in her small hands. Where? Her voice was hoarse from disuse. Where is everyone? Clarity, of Purpose. A descendant of Commander Vex, bearing his genetic legacy and his commitment to Earth, knelt down to eye level. Your species is extinct, Aisha. I'm so sorry, but you are not alone. 11 other children are waking up in chambers nearby. And there are 700 billion beings across 300 systems who have been waiting to meet you. The young Kaltorian held out a datapad, showing images that made Aisha's eyes widen. Aliens of every shape and size holding signs written in English. Welcome home, humanity. We remember. Thank you for hoping. They've been learning your language. Clarity of purpose explained softly. Learning your culture. Building a world where you and the other children can grow up safely. Surrounded by species who understand what your people sacrificed to teach us. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. The last human tears shed in over a century. We're really the last ones.
Yes.
But also no. Clarity of purpose gestured at the chamber around them. Your people left pieces of themselves everywhere. In our stories, our dreams, our choices. You're the last humans by biology, but humanity itself. Humanity is part of us all now. Outside, in orbit around Earth, 700 vessels from across the galaxy waited. Not warships, not conquerors. Just beings who had come to witness the moment when humanity's faith in the future was finally rewarded. As Aisha took her first steps in a century, supported by an alien who had been trained in human customs and care, the archive began to play a final recording throughout every chamber, every corridor, every next archive across the stars. It was children singing. Human children who had died 150 years ago. Their voices preserved in crystal and memory. Singing a song about hope, about tomorrow, about the world they dreamed could exist. And across 300 systems, billions of beings of hundreds of species stopped what they were doing and listened. Because humanity had taught them something more powerful than any weapon, more lasting than any empire, more true than any conquest. Hope cannot die as long as someone remembers. And the galaxy remembered. The galaxy would always remember.